Demolition and construction is always a race against time. Whether it's the sprint to get the demolition finished before construction can begin, or the marathon of delivering a major infrastructure project, we are constantly and continually working against the clock. But in our haste to stay one step ahead of Father Time, we're in constant danger of trading just in time for too soon. Consider the demolition worker standing at the site gates on a Monday morning. Just 7 days ago, he was stood in this exact spot when he witnessed the unthinkable, a fatal accident that claimed the life of a colleague, a friend. He spent a week at home, but grief is a luxury he can't afford. No work means no pay. The mortgage and the bills don't observe minutes of silence or periods of mourning. He walks onto the site. The faces are familiar. The smell of diesel and crushed concrete is the same as it ever was. And he thinks he's ready. But then the sound of falling debris echoes the crash he heard a week ago. Suddenly, he's overcome by a cold, paralyzing fear. The site is no longer a familiar workplace. It's a horror that he hasn't yet finished processing. Physically, he's back because he has to be, but mentally, his mind is still reliving the moment of impact. He's returned too soon, and in doing so, he's become a hazard to himself and to everyone around him. Then there's the excavator operator, a man whose skill behind the levers is unquestioned, but whose judgment off the clock has faltered. He knew a random drug and alcohol test was a possibility, and he knew that the results would be his undoing. And when the non-negative result came back, the fallout was immediate. There was a shouting match in the site office, a flurry of accusations, and he walked off the site before he could be sacked. But by the next morning, he's called upon his industry black book of contacts. He's found a firm desperate for an experienced operator. And by 7:30, he's climbing into the cab of a fresh machine on a different site. And to the new employer, he's a godsend, a skilled operator available at short notice. But the reality is far more sobering. The substances that triggered the drug test failure 24 hours ago are still coursing through his system. His reaction times are still blunted. His spatial awareness is still compromised. He's bypassed the system meant to keep the industry safe. He hasn't addressed the issue. He's simply relocated it. And now he's back far too soon. A company director watches his demolition firm slide inexorably towards the financial abyss. He's seen the signs for months, the unpaid suppliers, the HMRC demands, the disgruntled plant hire companies. But instead of an orderly, controlled exit, he spends his final weeks pre-packing his own future. The firm enters liquidation. To the creditors, it's a catastrophe. Small subcontractors face ruin, families lose their livelihoods. Yet while the liquidator is still cataloguing the remains of the old business, the director is already operating under a new name. He sits at the same desk in the same office, using the same assets he managed to shift before the hammer fell. He presents a business as usual face to the world, seeking new tenders while his former partners and employees are still licking their financial wounds. To those he left behind, his immediate reinvention feels like a slap in the face. There's been no period of reflection, no accountability, and no genuine consequence. He's risen from the ashes before the fire has even gone out. It is, by any moral metric, too soon. But perhaps the most haunting example of this too soon mentality lies at the site of the former Didcot A power station. For those in the demolition sector, Didcot is a name that carries a heavy, sombre weight. In February 2016, the boiler house partially collapsed prematurely, claiming the lives of 4 men. The tragedy was compounded by the horrific circumstances that followed. For almost 7 months, the bodies of 3 of those men remained trapped under the twisted steel. Eventually, a decision was made to bring down the remainder of the structure using explosives, while the 3 men were still unrecovered in the rubble. It was a decision made for safety and stability reasons, but for bereaved families, it felt like an act of desecration, of betrayal. It felt too soon to let the dust settle over their loved ones. And now, as we approach the 10th anniversary of that disaster, the site is back in the headlines. Tech giant Amazon has announced plans to build a massive data center on the very ground where the boiler house once stood. To a global tech giant, this is prime real estate, the logical and necessary development of a brownfield site. But for those who remember the images of the twisted seal, the site still feels somehow sacred. The investigation into the deaths remains unresolved. No one stood in the dock. No final closure has been granted to the families. To build on a site where the ghosts of 4 men are still waiting for justice feels premature, uncaring. It suggests that we're more interested in what can be built on top of the past than what we can learn from it. As an industry, we pride ourselves on our efficiency. We celebrate the speed with which we can clear a site or erect a frame. But our industry has a fundamental problem with the concept of enough time. We rush the traumatized worker back to the coalface because of a lack of financial safety nets. We allow an impaired operator to jump from job to job because we value a warm body in the cab over a rigorous safety culture. We permit the Phoenix director to start again because our insolvency laws favour the entrepreneur over the creditor. And we permit development on the sites of tragedies because we're too eager to pave over the parts of our history that make us uncomfortable. Whether that's resilience or merely a sign of cold indifference, I'll leave you to decide. But it does beg one big question. Just how soon is too soon?